There's no fancy intro to this yet. We'll figure that
No,
one out in
there's
the
not.
future. What's up, everybody? Aaron here, of course, from TMG, joined by Matt Beer. This time we're on opposite sides because, it's fun to switch things up.
Yeah.
Welcome to, we said last week on Casual that we would be reducing that show from a weekly show to something else, or to, an every couple weeks show, and that we'd be coming up with different things to sort of intersperse in between. And this is one of those ideas. Welcome to Battleground Countdown. Now, in the spirit of TMG, as I've said for years, with movie Battleground, it was just movie fights, but slightly different. What is Battleground Countdown, Matt?
Basically, it's a top 10 show, but a little different. It's top
Slightly
11.
different. Yes.
So
Our
that's
variation
the
is
difference.
yes. Our variation is we're going to do 11 films. So that honorable mention that always sits on the side, we're going to include it. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's it.
No, so my idea for the show, like where it originally came from, and I don't know if you've ever like talked about this, but before because before Casual there was After Dark, like before I joined that, before we ever relaunched Battleground, we had discussed me coming back to TMG as a part of us doing something together.
Yes.
Because it was during the pandemic, everybody had free time, and it was like, because we would still I left the channel, it was like early 2019, but we still talked like intermittently back and forth, just as friends talking about movies and various different things. And so it was like,
right,
when I had the time, it's like, oh, you should come back and do something. And then that never happened, obviously. So this is it. This is us doing it now. And I feel like doing a show like this, like a countdown show, it's nothing original, but it's a good way to force conversation about various different films based on the topic.
Right. And we obviously a lot of topics we can get into as these shows come out, but
Yeah.
I think you brought it up for today's episode, as you've seen in the title. With it being National Cinema Day,
Yes.
we're going to be doing the top 11 movies of 2020s. It has to be released in the decade of 2020.
Yeah. Now, of course, if you're not watching this the day that it's uploaded because you're celebrating National Cinema Day, it was Sunday, August 27th was this year's National Cinema Day. This was something that theaters began last year. I guess this is the second annual National Cinema Day, where theaters come together and unilaterally discount their prices by a vast amount. Last year it was $3. This year it's $4 because inflation. And basically it just encourages people to go to cinemas together on this day. Last year, I know there were a couple of special re-releases that were put out for it. Jaws had a 3D remaster. Spider-Man No Way Home went back to theaters. This year, I don't actually know if anything like that is happening.
I know Lady Bird is getting a re-release. Not where I'm at, but Lady Bird's going to get
okay.
Yeah. Lady Bird gets a re-release. I can actually pull up my
I know
theater showtimes.
I know Bottoms bumped its release up by a week. Like originally it was supposed to come out the first week of September, and now it's coming out this weekend.
So you got Bottoms.
Sorry guys, no shock. We're recording this before the weekend.
Yeah, we're recording right before the weekend. But we got Asteroid City's getting re-released.
Okay, not seeing that again.
I imagine 10 people might be interested in that.
Yeah.
There's really nothing crazy coming out around here. There's a Sing Along for The Little Mermaid. If you want to do that. The remake.
The remake.
So if you're interested in doing that, then
I was gonna say Gran Turismo.
I guess. Yeah, Gran Turismo
properly comes out this weekend.
Yeah, its official release is Friday. Yeah, it was supposed to come out 2 weeks ago. They moved it back for whatever reason.
And then should have came out 2 weeks regular ago. Screenings of the movie, despite the fact that they bumped it. I don't know. All that does is hurt its opening weekend, so I guess we'll find out. But
yeah, because it was going to go up against the Dracula on the boat. So
yeah,
I guess they were scared of that.
The only thing it does now is if it does decent enough, it has a chance at opening number one. But I don't.
Yeah,
because it wouldn't have opened number one that week. But
no, but look, you got Blue Beetle that made $25 million, and then you have Barbie, which made what, probably 20. So, like, I mean, you got that. Can you make $20 million for Gran Turismo? If you can, congrats. You're probably number one. Because I don't see Barbie having a 0% drop. And Blue Beetle, I think, will be out of theaters by that point. So,
by week 2, it'll be out of theaters.
yep.
Sorry, DC.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously, yeah. So National Cinema Day is the reason we came up with this topic, and I thought it'd be a good general topic to sort of launch the show with. On that note, Matt, do you want to discuss the upcoming topics now, or do you want to save that for the end?
Let's save it for the end.
Save it for the end.
Let's have them wait.
All right, yeah.
Let's have the three people wait.
We do, in planning this show, we have put together all the topics for the remainder of the year. Again, in the classic case of it draws interest, all the topics will be connected to something that's coming out over the course of the rest of the year, so long as the prolonging strikes don't get anything bumped. But, we'll adjust if that happens. But, yeah, so with that said, is there anything, any news, anything on your mind, or you want to just hop into it?
Not that I can think of. I mean, there's really no news.
That's true. There is. There's a reason we stopped doing casual.
My TV down. But let's get into the rules. Absolutely. Let's get into, I guess, how the show goes.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. So, of course, the topic is the top 11 films of the 2020s. If it was released, we were including up until this year, just because if we've seen it, it should count. The caveat is because it's National Cinema Day, we restricted everything to films that received a theatrical release because so many films over the pandemic did get sent to streaming and had no sort of theatrical exhibition. We wanted to keep it focused on films that did go to theaters. So we set the topic, we figure out our lists individually. The way that this is going to work is Matt will start. He'll do his bottom 4. That's 11, 10, 9, and 8. I'll do my bottom 4. He'll do his next 4, 7, 6, 5, and 4. Then I'll do my next 4. And then for our top 3, we'll trade back and forth 1 to 1 to reveal our individual top 11s. If in the event somebody has a film on their list that appears later down the line for the other person, we'll simply just say punt, which is a rule from that American sport that Matt loves so much. It's also probably the most direct thing we're going to jack from the top 10 show, but you know what? It makes sense. It makes sense. So why not? If somebody can figure out another word from another sport that makes just as much sense, we'll take that then. But until then, we'll stick with it. So the idea being, so if something is in both of our bottom 4s, we'll just talk about it then. But let's say my number 10 is his number 6, then we'll punt, so on and so forth. Just to sort of talk about it at its highest possible point on the list. And then at the end, we'll sort of sit here, we'll discuss, and we will put together the show's official top 11 films of the 2020s. With that said, if everything is good to go, Matt, we'll turn it over to you with your number 11.
All right. So my number 11 is probably going to surprise some people. It might surprise you too. I'm going to go Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
All right, and that is a punt. So
okay, so it is fine. I thought it might be, but there it is. So now we're gonna move to number 10. This is the first movie that was actually on Netflix, but it did get a theatrical release, which I don't know if we mentioned it. I believe we did.
Yeah.
All the streaming movies that could be on our list had to have been in theaters at some point.
Yes.
Which luckily this one was, so it could get some Oscar consideration. RRR.
That is not on my list, but a great film. Go ahead.
Okay, so I love RRR. For one, you got an incredible, just music number that, of course, resulted in an Oscar victory for it. I cannot for the life of me remember it on the top of my head, but as soon as you hear
Not to.
It's like it gets you going. I love that musical number. It is just so outlandishly just wonderful. The action in the movie is so over the top that you just can't help but laugh. The bridge scene is great in the movie. You have the scene where you have one of our lead characters running in the rainforest, and you have Tiger chasing him, and he punches a tiger or whatever. You have the whole at the mansion. You have all the animals running out.
I was gonna say that's when he throws a tiger. I think he
Yeah,
punches a tiger earlier, and then he throws a tiger later.
in that scene. Have all not just tigers, but you have all these different animals running and fighting and attacking these people. And then, of course, the very end, you have this big like shootout, this big action set piece that's like so great. It is violent, it's brutal. There's that scene kind of in the very beginning where everybody's trying to get in, get past the gate. You have one man take down everybody. It is so wonderful. I think, isn't Ray Stevens in it, or am I mistaking him for someone else?
As like the British
Yeah.
Parliament member, yeah, it's Ray Stevenson.
Yeah, Ray Stevens, the late great Ray Stevens, is in it. I just love this movie. This is a movie I could throw on, and I mean I could show it to just about everybody except for John Campea, and they're gonna love it. Like they're gonna really love this movie because John Campea does not like. No, he felt it was way too over the top. But that's what makes this movie great. I love it. I absolutely love it. Is it the best movie of all time? No. But it's one of my favorite movies that came out last year. I adore this film.
So I should say I was lucky. I had heard how brilliant this film was, but it's one of those movies where, especially because it's in another language, and I certainly had no interest in watching any English dub that may exist of this, but it was one of those things where it's like I had to have the time to really sit down and watch it and like put my focus on it because it's not something you can really just have on in the background. And so for the longest time, I didn't see it. And I got incredibly lucky that right before the Oscars, both this and All Quiet on the Western Front were put into theaters in the original language here. And so I was able to go see this in a theater. I think we talked about it on Casual when we did the films of 2022 earlier this year. This was like a late cut from my favorite films of the year list. This movie is so much fun. Like it is the definition of fun. The only thing that holds it back from being like on my favorites list of that year is just personally, I think the middle of it drags on a little too long. I think we go back to that flashback for just a little too long. It sort of kills the momentum of the movie a bit. But that said, you're immediately back into like I don't even know how to describe some of this stuff. Like there's the Passion of the Christ / musical moment where like he is literally getting Passion of the Christ, and then everyone just starts singing, and it's a whole musical.
It's so great.
It's like, what is this?
It's so great. I love it, and it's not just like this fun action movie. Like it has heart to it too. You know, there's a story where he's going out, trying to find his sister, and like it's one of those movies where it's just so crazy, but it's able to not go too far. You have like your emotional beats that really help keep it going, and that scene's so great.
I feel like it's just the over the topness is more so the nature of just because I don't know if this is technically defined under Bollywood, so I'm just gonna go with
I think it was
like with like Indian cinema. Like it just seems like generally there's a little more of an over the top approach taken it, which I think in this instance is appreciated because like this is in terms of like a friendship between two characters. This is really genuinely portrayed. Like you feel every moment of friendship and then anger when they realize the truth of everything. Like it's really, really well put together.
Yeah, I just like I said, I truly love this movie. It's like 3 hours long, and if I never heard about the movie, I probably never would have watched it. I'm so glad I heard about this movie and just how wild it is because it is fun. I will say if you're somebody that if it gets to a certain point as far as just how crazy some of the action or some of the things happening in the movie are, it may not be for you. Like John Campea, I think it was just too much for someone like him. Someone who is like very just classy and stuff with his jokes. But like
if you're an animal lover, I don't know some of the shit they do with I mean they don't kill animals in this, but they literally do physically throw a tiger at one point. So
yeah, they do. But no, if like there is a line that can easily be crossed with things that get over the top, I can think of my dad, for example, as being one of those people. Yeah, you may not want to watch the movie, but outside of that, I mean, check it out because it's a lot of fun and it has heart to it. It's not just over the top to be over the top. Um, everything works. That's great action in it too. What are my cats doing over there? So now we're gonna move to my number 9, which is going to be The Batman.
Excellent film. Also not on my list. Go ahead.
Yeah. So The Batman to me was a movie I was really looking forward to. I am not like a lot of people where they were against the Robert Pattinson casting. I think if you've seen Robert Pattinson movies, you were for this casting because he's a legit great actor. Matt Reeves, obviously coming off the Apes movies, and this movie I think is brilliant. I think people that maybe weren't as big on it are going to be bigger on it when the sequel comes out because I know some people had issues with Bruce Wayne, but it just makes sense in the movie with how it's portrayed. And I think once you get the sequel, that's where you're going to get your more traditional. And I think that's where people are going to be like, okay, yeah, it makes sense. It's a story that is, being planned out. It's, making sense. I like the first one more. I think it's really well written. I think you got some incredible performances in this movie. Zoe Kravitz is great in this film. Colin Farrell, I think, is great as the Penguin, like truly great in this movie. I think it's wise to give him his own show on HBO. I think he is wonderful as a Penguin, and honestly, you could have made an argument he probably could have been nominated. That's how good he was in this movie. Robert Pattinson was a great Batman. He's a violent Batman in this movie too. I thought the Riddler is great. I love what they did with the Riddler in this movie. I think the direction is wonderful. The cinematography is brilliant. It's a crime that it wasn't nominated for best cinematography. It absolutely should have been. It was wonderful. The tone of the movie is great. It is dark. It is darker than any Christopher Nolan Batman movie. I think it's really well written. Again, it's a long movie. It's nearly 3 hours long, but they do a great job making it work. I think Matt Reeves does a great job with that. And it wouldn't surprise me if he, while writing the movie, if Matt Reeves did acid and listened to Nirvana. I believe that he joked around saying, "Yeah, I listened to Nirvana making this movie," or at least somebody did, because like it really does feel like it. But I think the score for this movie too is brilliant. So yeah, The Batman. That's my number 9. It's one of the best Batman movies. Probably my number 2 or maybe even number 1 Batman movie. In all honesty, I love this film.
Yeah, The Batman, again, we're picking 11 films out of a 4-year span, so there's films that won't be on either of our lists that I think we can still say are brilliant. This movie is excellent. The first time I saw it, I probably only had 2 real issues with it, and then over time, one of those was resolved. I think having seen it 3 times now, my issues with the third act are kind of resolved. Yeah. I understand the logistical reasons of why they did what they did, and creatively, I think they did a good job with it. Really, at this point, there's one singular beat with this movie that every time I watch it, I just kind of go, "This isn't needed." And it's the Zoe Kravitz is John Turturro's daughter. I feel like there's already enough reasons for her to hate him. It just feels a little too melodramatic.
Okay.
But that said, it's a singular beat in a film that is absolutely excellent. I mean, I have bigger issues with The Dark Knight, which is considered the pinnacle of Batman films. So the fact that on his first go, Matt Reeves stepped up to the plate and maybe didn't better Nolan quite yet, but certainly is competing with him, says a lot about him as a filmmaker. Yeah. You're right. The performances in this top to bottom are excellent. Colin Farrell's great. I think in general he's underrated, but Jeffrey Wright's performance is Gordon in this movie.
So good.
Like just the understated uneasiness of all of this, like the dude never looks comfortable in all the right ways, and I think he really plays that well. And you're right, I remember, I forget what the other film that was referenced was, but I remember right before the Oscars, Roger Deakins, who was nominated for, I forget the name of the film, but it was Sam Mendes' film that came out that year. He was
Yeah, I
nominated
know what you're
for it.
talking about.
And he did an interview as a part of like a series of interviews that a magazine did for the Oscars. And he spent most of his interview talking about the shame of the Oscars not nominating cinematographers for these bigger films. It was Top Gun Maverick. It was Greg Fraser for the Batman, and I forget the gentleman who did Top Gun. And he was like, I don't know. He's like, those are two of the best shot films I've ever seen. As the man who's been nominated however many times in the history of the
Yeah.
Oscars, he's like, I have no idea why they're not here, but I am this year.
Yeah.
It's like that's how you know that these guys are doing a hell of a job. Obviously, I believe Fraser won the year before for Dune. Frankly, I think this movie's even better shot than Dune. So
Yeah,
I don't
I
know
agree.
how the hell he did not get nominated for this. You're right. That's one of the biggest snubs of 2022.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could have won. Like, I think it's just that
Yeah.
well shot. And also Paul Dano. I don't want to forget about him. He's great as the Riddler. I love that the Riddler is basically, it would be like us if like we decided that we were just gonna destroy whatever city we lived in, because he's basically
Yeah.
just a streamer. It's like, hey, thank you for the 500 followers, guys. And it's like,
Like if I just
I
started
love it.
following QAnon, like
Yeah, it's like that. Thank you for following us. We're gonna take down Orlando, but like that's essentially that would be like that. But no, he's great. I love him in this movie, and yeah, I'm really excited to see what they do with the sequel. That's something I'm really looking forward to. But yeah, that's my number 9. I truly love it. My number 8, I know it's not going to be in your top 10 or
sure.
top 11. We'll just get out of the way right now. Spider-Man: No Way Home is my number 8. Um,
That is my number 11.
okay, that is truly surprising. Um, that really surprised me, but hey, it well deserved.
Yeah,
So
go
you want
ahead. You start first. It's higher under me.
so yeah, and it's perfect timing because we'll get right to yours after. But yeah,
Yeah.
Spider-Man: No Way Home. This out of all these movies, I think it is the one that means the most to me. Um, Obviously, with my childhood, I grew up with the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, and while I was in high school, that's when the Garfield ones came out, or at least the first one did. Um, but I think this movie could have been really bad. It really could have been with
Oh, yes.
everything they were trying to do. However, I think this movie did a really good job taking the Toby era, the Garfield era, and the Tom era and mixing it together, not making it feel like something is too much. It's being thrown in there because, hey, you remember this, right? Like they didn't throw in Doc Ock because, like, hey, Doc Ock from Toby's Spider-Man movies, you remember him, right? No,
Was he
like
him again?
everything in this movie, even the Daredevil cameo, it all served a purpose. Daredevil was in it because Tom Holland, his Spider-Man was ousted. He is now known as Spider-Man. He needs a lawyer so he can try to live a normal life like he did prior to that. That's why you have Matt Murdock. Because why would you have just like Joe Ortiguez, attorney at law, be there? No, like it makes sense. That's Matt Murdock. It's in New York. It makes sense. You have Doctor Strange in there because that is something that is setting the plot up for this movie, and it's also setting up what I believe is going to be kind of at least the beginnings of what's going to happen in the upcoming phases in Marvel,
Right.
where everything's going to start colliding with one another. You have him in there because of the spell, because you need the spell for the movie to work, because how else is everybody going to be in this movie? You have Doc Ock in the movie, and you have, Green Goblin, you have Electro, you have Sandman. All these characters are in there because they're serving the purpose of the film. They're not just in there to be like, hey, here's a cameo, hello, and then that's it. I think it's all done really, really well. I think the writing is really good too for this movie. I think that everything with Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, like it doesn't feel like they're trying to prop one of those two above the other. Like they do
No.
a really good job of mixing them in. And if they wanted those appearances to be the final appearances for Tobey and Andrew, which I don't believe it will be, especially with
I
one of the news stories coming out about Secret Wars and Garfield wanting to be in it.
Yeah,
which
I think at the very least, if they do go back there, they'll bring Garfield back. McGuire
yeah,
maybe because of age, but
I think I think Garfield and McGuire will both come back in Secret Wars. But again, I think that's because they're going to bring back, Hugh Jackman and all these people. Anyway,
everything, yeah.
but they're not propping one up over the other. But if this was their final appearance as Spider-Man, they do a really good job having this be a good send-off for them. Like you have with Toby, we hear he's living, a normal life now. He's married to MJ. He probably has kids. Like he has a happy family. His story, it can end there. We all know he has a happy ending. Plus, he got to have that final confrontation with, Doc Ock again, where it's just Doc Ock's not evil. Like he's a good guy, and they get to have like a nice little interaction. And then, he plays a big part in Green Goblin, Norman becoming, normal again. Andrew, he comes into this movie where he's kind of broken. Like he's dealing with his stuff. And I think if they wanted to make a movie, the stuff they were talking or he was talking about, I think could be really cool. But with everything that happens in this movie, with him saving, MJ in this universe, catching her, that whole thing's resolved. And you see him heal in this movie too. I just really love this film. I think they do a really good job balancing everything. I think John Watts does a really good job directing this movie, which he did a fine job, I think, with Homecoming and Far From Home. I think he did all right. But this one, I think he did a really good job. Hi, Kat. And I think the performances in this movie are wonderful, too. I think Willem Dafoe in this movie is so good. He's so good in this movie. You have the big fight scene with him and Tom Holland. Tom Holland's just wailing on him, and he's just laughing. It's so good. I love this film. I'm gonna stop talking about it. I'm gonna let you get into it because it is your number 11 movie. But yeah, No Way Home. I truly love this film. I could talk about it forever. I really could.
Yeah, so to sort of to start before I get into the movie, the way that I sort of, because we approach things, I guess, from a probably different perspective. The way that I broke my list down is my top 10 films are all films that I gave a 10 out of 10 to in terms of score. And then I sort of reordered them based on how much I valued the theatrical experience of seeing those films. Spider-Man No Way Home is the only one that's not a 10 out of 10 that I put on my list. I actually bumped another film off to put it on at the last minute. And the reason I do that, and again, I understand why you would think I wouldn't have it on there just because I've been open about the fact that while I do love this movie, I think the quote I said once is it's the best possible made version of something that still disappointed me, and that's just on concept alone. Because I've always loved the setup that they left at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home, and I felt that they abandoned that concept a little bit to go into the multiverse and to go with the Spider-Man and all that. That said, I agree 100% with everything that you said. The only thing I could really add is, as somebody who's not as high on other Spider-Man films as other people, this movie made me like things that I didn't like previously. I'm not a fan of Dafoe's performance in the original Spider-Man. I think he's too over the top at times. This is the perfect delivery of that. This is like, you've had 20 years to continue to improve and grow and develop as an actor, and I think he nailed it this time around. I wasn't a fan of the MJ Peter romance in Far From Home. I thought it was really forced in that movie, and I thought her personality change was really forced in that film. It works in this film. The chemistry is natural. Maybe it helps that they were sleeping together in real life this time around, but it would do something for you. But that said, it does feel a lot more natural. I think the I like the implementation of Happy in this film. The idea that he still has that connection to Tony. Tony is still looking out for him in some way, that he's still around. Yeah, and I think the ending of this film is brilliant. I think the idea that this whole trilogy is an origin story to get his character to the point of where he needs to be to become the Spider-Man that people all know and love. And, a lot of I remember back when Homecoming came out, there was this big controversy over, oh my God, are they making Tony his Uncle Ben and all this, that? No, his Uncle Ben was his Aunt May. Just Uncle Ben left his life at a different point, but she's the one that became the pivotal person for him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I appreciated every element of it. It is like, it sounds like a diss, but I mean it as a compliment for something that I walked into where I just kind of felt, I don't know if I'm excited to see all this. It is the best possible version of it they could have done. To be honest, and even though I liked the movie I'm about to reference, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and the way that it handles its multiversal plot and its cameos is exactly what I feared for with Spider-Man. It is just hype and buzz and, oh shit, look who's here. It's like, none of it matters.
Right.
The reason it's on my list is because, again, if we're talking about theatrical films, this movie saved theaters, like almost quite literally, like to the point where people who analyze box office called the pandemic era at this film. Like, this movie made so much money. It was so successful. After its re-release, because I looked it up to be sure, after its re-release last year, it's now at 1.944 million. It's just under 2 billion.
And that's without China.
Yeah, and that's without China, because it did not get China. That is incredible.
Yeah.
And I feel like, even though, like, I don't love the movie, and again, you're comparing apples to oranges. Like, the next film I'm about to mention is so different from this. It is comparing apples to oranges. This movie did something for theaters that I felt was worth honoring by putting it on the list.
Yeah, and the only thing that, like, made me go, yeah, I don't like what this caused was after this movie came out, there were some movies after, including Doctor Strange, where every single time something's mentioned, everybody's just cheering and going nuts. And it's because, we're going to try to, like, make a funny TikTok video. It's like in Doctor Strange, it's like, I don't know, it'd be like, I got to go see Wanda. Yeah, Wanda, we know who Wanda is. It's like, shut up. It's like, shut up. And it's like when I watch After Sun, you have Paul Mescal. Yeah, stop it. It's Paul Mescal. You don't even know who he is. But now you do. But you didn't at that time.
Yeah, now you do, yeah.
But
by the time we get to Gladiator 2, we can get that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's going to be Gladiator. You don't know that. Gladiator 2 isn't even officially announced. But, that's the only thing. But, like, I think, too.
Oh, no, this movie's ruined film culture. But that said, it's still a brilliant.
Like that, and then, like, now we have all the TikTok people making videos like, oh, this could happen in this movie. It's like, look, you're doing that because you got all these views with Spider-Man. Okay, stop it.
Just stop.
But
I don't need theories for the Thunderbolts. Like, go on now. Let's.
And I will say, I think, especially for the first view, like, as long as people weren't doing flips, it was a really cool experience to watch in theaters. Like, the experience,
probably the first one like that. Like, I can only think of 3 movies that have ever done that. That movie, Endgame, and Force Awakens. At least in my lifetime that I can remember.
Yeah, like, just those are probably my top 3 theater experiences. Because No Way Home, just, and it's
maybe
like
the last Harry Potter.
Maybe
probably up there too.
But to be fair, I don't remember it enough to go like, it has to be my top 3. So I don't think it was like as crazy. But especially just when Toby's introduced and Andrew's introduced, and you have everybody going nuts for it. It's like, you could tell, like, at that moment, they weren't doing it to make videos. Like, it was like it was older people that were around when Toby was watching, or Toby was doing his thing. And Andrew Garfield, that's when everybody was going nuts. And that really did add to it. But, like, then it's like Doctor Strange. Let's cheer at every single, like, mention. Spider-Man's mentioned. Yeah. Okay, stop it. Okay, it's Doctor Strange. Okay, if you want to go nuts, wait for Secret Wars. Or Deadpool 3, I guess.
All right, so Spider-Man No Way Home was my number 11, so I'll go ahead and move on to my number 10, which is just based off the way this has gone so far. I'm assuming this is not on your list. Judas and the Black Messiah.
It is not.
Okay. Actually, no, I know it's not, because we talked about streamers before, and you don't have a Max film on your list.
Yeah,
so no. I was going to say, by the way,
it was close, but no.
Pre-discussion, there was a second film. I realized after, that was also a Warner film, so there's technically 2 on there. So Judas and the Black Messiah, I the reason it's number 10, because it was my favorite film of that year. The reason it's number 10 is because of all the other films on my list, I think it's the one that you least need to see in theaters.
Yeah.
It's so much so I saw it twice. The first time I saw it was at home on streaming, and I enjoyed it so much that I was like, I need to go see this in a theater while it's still there, and so I did.
Yeah.
This movie is a powerhouse of performance. In one of the oddest instances of campaigning I've ever seen, both co-leads of this film, Lakeith Stanfield and Daniel Kaluuya, found themselves nominated for Best Supporting Actor together. I don't even know how on earth that happened, but it did. Kaluuya won the award, which was much deserved for his portrayal of Fred Hampton. I mean, I'm not an expert on Fred Hampton, but the little bit that you look up, you can truly see that he went to the effort to really embody the character. I believe he got to meet and get to know his family a little bit, the ones that are still alive at this point. And you can just see that his heart and soul really went into the performance.
Yeah.
You know that you're just so engrossed and lost in the experience of something when your Oscar speech includes references to the fact that your parents obviously had to have sex in order for you to be here. Talk about national embarrassment. But
thank you for fucking.
But no, this movie, it's a powerhouse in performances. Those two are great. Jesse Plemons, who I feel like has finally reached the point where he's no longer underrated thanks to films like this, Power of the Dog. He's going to be in Killers of the Flower Moon coming up.
Game Night.
Game Night. Honestly,
Game Night, people loved him in
Game Night. He's also excellent in this as the agent that's sort of playing Stanfield's character. Yeah, man, this movie is it's excellent. It shines a light on a story that's connected to stuff that people are aware of, but not a specific story that people know. And I also think it's an interesting tale of the lengths that somebody will go to try and survive their own life, if you know what I mean. What I forget the character's name, but what Stanfield's character was willing to go through, and the emotions you go through in getting close to these people and becoming a part of them just in the end to have to betray them for the sake of your own good. I think it showed the complexity of that really, really well.
Yeah.
So yeah, and my number 10. I loved it.
Yeah, I really do enjoy this movie too. If we did a top 20, I think it might make my top 20 because I do think it's a really good movie. Great performances, like you said. Daniel Kaluuya is phenomenal. Yeah, it was weird that him and Lakeith Stanfield got nominated for supporting actor, but that was a weird award show, if I remember right. Because wasn't that when you had Ma Rainey's Black Bottom come out and Chadwick Boseman was expected to win and they were like, yeah, he's going to win. So we're going to have that be the last award. And Joaquin Phoenix, of all people, is the one announcing it. And it's like Anthony Hopkins wins. And he goes, all right, that's it.
Which, by the way, a lot of people may not realize the whole Joaquin Phoenix of it all was a switch in and of itself, because usually it's the best actress winner from the previous year that announces actor. So they had to make another thoughtful choice to put him in that position for whatever reason. And it's the whole thing was just and then before that you have, God, what else happened that night? You had Frances McDormand, somebody pissed her off between awards. Yeah. So she accepted Best Picture and then walked off and then came back for Best Actress and was fucking pissed. Something happened in between.
Yeah.
Oh God, who was it that twerked with Lil Rel to debut?
It just
Glenn Close or someone like that.
Glenn Close or
Judy
it was someone or something.
It was someone like that, was twerking with Lil Rel, and the whole thing was weird. I mean, it was a fun show to watch, but it was a nightmare.
It was one of the I think it might be the worst Oscar show I've seen, even worse than the James Franco Anne Hathaway hosted show. It was entertaining to watch, but yeah, the Joaquin Phoenix end is that was the perfect way to end that show because it was just so weird. But no, I think the movie is really good though. Great performances. Todd's great in the movie too, as you mentioned. So yeah, it didn't make my top 11, but yeah, I enjoyed it.
I have a feeling my next few aren't, because these are all just Oscar drama films that I really enjoyed. My number 9 is The Banshees of Inisherin.
That almost that's probably my 12.
That's
Like
your
it
12? Yeah.
just missed it.
So for me, when you're talking about, first off, I mean, again, same things I basically said about Judas and the Black Messiah. It's a masterclass in acting. All
Yeah.
four leads in this film were nominated, and deservedly so. All four of them should have been. If any one of these actors is off their game, the movie doesn't work.
Right.
Martin McDonagh, I think, obviously he hasn't made a bad film yet, but I think this film cemented him as one of the best working writer directors in Hollywood. Just the fact that, you know, you can go from something like Three Billboards to this, which are so similar but so different in every way, and nail both of them. And then when you're talking about the theatrical experience, the cinematography in this movie is excellent. Like just the shots of the Irish like island landscape, and maybe I'm biased because I'm Irish. Like I look at that and I go, oh yeah, like don't literally recognize it, but like I can relate to this because I've seen stuff like this before. It's just beautiful. And like something that often doesn't get talked about, the coloring in this film is really well done. Like especially when like he sets the fire and stuff like that, the color is really vibrant in it. I think it really works for the storytelling of the film. But yeah, like again, it's such an intriguing story. It's a case of like, again, especially because so many people nowadays in film and television want the answer to every little detail. And one of the things I love about the movie is the premise of it is just Brendan Gleeson wakes up one morning and decides he doesn't want to be friends with Colin Farrell anymore. And when pressed for why, it's just kind of, I don't know, man. Like, I'm bored with life, so I don't want to be friends with you anymore. Like,
so yeah. Now, when I talked about the Batman, did I say that Colin Farrell's name was Colin Firth? I think I called him Colin Firth.
Oh, I missed it if you did.
I might have called him that, but no, this is a great movie. This is a movie that not everybody, like if you're not into, like if you're like Logan Paul and you're not into like more of the dialogue heavy movies.
Jesus.
If you're not,
what a fucking prick, man. Yeah. Who are you of all people to come out?
I wanted this biopic movie to show some he probably wanted to see Japan get attacked because that's where his career ended.
Oh, I had
a new one blossomed.
I was gonna say it's the king of visual storytelling with that one. He probably
it wasn't enough action. It was all dialogue. They were just talking. Yeah, it's a biopic, dude.
What do you?
Anyway, if you're like Logan Paul and you want more, you're more of like an action. You're not big into just like the dialogue heavy movies. This is not going to be your movie. But if you like movies that are very well written, smartly written, where the dialogue's great, this is a movie for you. It absolutely is for you. It has incredible acting. I feel so bad for Colin Farrell because he gave this performance in a year where Brendan Fraser was in The Whale and Austin Butler was in Elvis, and both of those people gave incredible performances. I feel bad for Colin Farrell. I really, really do, because he probably could have won most years because of how good he is in this movie. But he's so good. Brendan Gleeson's great in this movie. Just all the acting in general. Barry Keoghan, he's wonderful in this movie too. He has a really heartbreaking scene in the movie too, where he professes his love and gets rejected and gets friend zoned. It's sad, but no, it's really well written. Cinematography is wonderful. Martin McDonagh, I agree, is one of the best writer directors working right now. Even if he was just a writer, he'd be one of the best writers working right now.
Yeah, his screenplays are so sharp.
Yeah, he does a great job with this movie. So didn't make my top 11, but it was close. It definitely was really close. Last year was a great year for movies.
It was. So we'll go on to my number 8 then. And it's ironic that we were just talking about the Oscar drama because this was right at the center of it. My number 8 is The Father.
That did not make it, but I have not seen The Father.
Yeah. So for me, the father, in particular, the father was a fun theatrical experience because I did get to see it in theaters. Its release wasn't super wide, but I did
Mhm.
get to see it in theaters. And it was, for anyone who doesn't know what the premise of the film is, essentially Anthony Hopkins plays an elderly British man with dementia. And so within the film, you sort of are seeing these various different stories where it's the same set of actors, Olivia Colman. I'm trying to remember who else is in it. Mark Gatiss, if you're like I think Doctor Who fans, he was involved with that. Anyways, there's a lot of different British actors that are in this. And so you're seeing these various different versions of sort of the same story told, and at various different points one actor could be playing his daughter, and then next in the next scene they'll be playing the girlfriend of somebody else, and in one scene he could have a interest in somebody romantically like a younger woman, and then in the next scene they're his nurse, and then in one scene his son-in-law is played by one actor, and then the next scene is played by a completely different actor with a totally different personality. And so the entire movie is sort of just shifting through all these various realities. And you're trying to figure out which one is the real one or what pieces of each one make up the real one before you get to the reveal at the end. But it's done in a way where, because it's based on a play, where it's not like, when you hear that premise, you almost think like a multiversal type thing. Like that's just what the default that people go to. And what's so refreshing is it's not that at all. It's just as
Mhm.
simple as he walks from one room to the next and the reality around him has changed. And there's no fanciness to any of it. It's just that's reality now. And as somebody who has had not close relatives, thankfully, but has had distant relatives deal with memory issues like this, it's a very realistic portrayal of that. Like it's really really realistic to the idea of you walk into a room one day and someone recognizes who you are, then you walk into the room next day and they don't recognize who you are, but they have this intense memory of something else that they connect you to, and then the next
Yeah.
day they'll remember you again, and the next day they won't know who you are at all or what they've associated you to previously. Like it's a really realistic portrayal of how this all works.
Yeah.
um and the twist at the end, like no matter how you try and piece it together in your head, the way the movie ends, without going into it because I do want people to see it because it's probably one of the more underseen films on this list, is kind of heartbreaking. And I remember I made an Instagram post about it, and I don't post things on Instagram very often, but like I remember, especially because my Instagram's a lot of like my high school friends and college friends and things like that, people were like pissed that Chadwick didn't win the Oscar, and my thing was like, listen, did the Oscars fuck up for the way that they organized that? 100%. But that
Yeah.
said, go see The Father, because genuinely Hopkins earned that Oscar.
Right.
He's
That's what I
the
hear.
only person on that list that could have beat Chadwick, and I would have genuinely gone, yes, I understand. When I saw The Father, like, I was a full, firm believer that Chadwick was going to win the Oscar, and then I saw this movie and I went, fuck, he may not win it because
Right.
Hopkins is that good. Um, and it's a shame that he wasn't there to accept the award because it would have been the most coherent I'd seen him in that month.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, that's a bad joke. But no, it's a really, really interesting movie. And
Mhm.
then, as I said earlier, like with the theatrical experience, I saw it in a theater where there was only like maybe 4 or 5 people in there total, but like in a respectful way, you could audibly hear people like keeping up with the film and sort of piecing it together and trying to figure out and conjecture like what is the reality of the situation. And
Mhm.
I think it's one of the more unique experiences I've ever had in a cinema. It's not like a traditional mystery where like you're trying to piece it together. It's a
Yeah.
very unique experience, I think.
Yeah. And I haven't seen the movie, and I was expecting Chadwick Boseman to win. So when it was Hopkins, I was shocked. But
Hmm.
then I hear how great he is. So yeah. All right. So now we're going to move on to what is going to be our number 7 through number 4 movies. And I'm going to start it off here. I'd be curious if this one's going to be a pun or not. It's The
Okay.
Fablemans.
The Fablemans is actually my number 7 as well, believe it or not.
Okay, so there we go. The Fablemans is number 7. So I guess we can just get into it now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, so this is obviously the um, Steven Spielberg movie that it's about his family. Obviously, It's not the Spielberg's. It's story. It's his basically his childhood, what he went through as a kid, and growing up, and just how he fell in love with cinema. And you see him when he's just a little kid going to the movies for the first time, and just being inspired by what he saw, and him wanting to be a filmmaker, getting a camera, making homemade movies. It truly is something that if you are wanting to be a filmmaker, it's going to inspire you. It's going to hit you in the feels. If you're making movies, I'm sure it hit you and you relate to it a lot. I think this is a really well written movie. I think I don't remember the kid's name. He plays Spielberg in the movie. I think he's great in this film. I think he does a really good job playing Spielberg as a kid. I don't know what Spielberg was like as a kid, but I assume knowing Spielberg is the one who directed it, this is pretty close. I think he did a really good job in the movie. It does feel at times like like a 1950s type movie where you have the scene at the end where the bully comes in and helps save the day and does the whole like punch, and you see the guy like skedaddle and kind of roll around or whatever. Like the one little kid that's always been mean to Spielberg when he moved to that area. But I think Paul Dano is wonderful in this movie. Does a great job as the father in the movie. And, like he goes through a whole thing where he's like, look, I want you to get a job that is realistic. That's actually a job where you can support yourself and your family. I don't want you to try to try to do your hobby for a living because it's probably not going to happen. And, you see that whole thing where he transitions and grows from that moment to where, look, you're going to be a director. This is what you want. This is what you want to do. You're going to do it. And like that whole scene with him and Spielberg, it was really powerful. I thought that whole scene, it reminded me of, the scene, obviously different subject matter, but Call Me by Your Name, where you have that father-son discussion.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of similar to that in a way too, where it's
Right.
like, you're going to do this. And it kind of gave that vibe a little bit. Obviously, one being about somebody wanting to direct, and the other being along with another man that
I should say we're not comparing filmmaking.
No, we're not going to compare that. But it's like a similar conversation.
The vibe is the same. Yeah.
It's the same vibe. There we go. The same vibe.
It's a loving father.
I think Michelle Williams, right? Michelle Williams?
Yes, Michelle Williams.
Okay, I wanted to make sure.
And the kid's name, I looked it up. The kid's name is Gabriel LaBelle.
Yeah, he does a great job in the movie. And look, there's 1,000 white women in Hollywood, white blonde haired women. Okay, so I wanted to make sure I got it right. But no, I know some people were like, she shouldn't have been nominated and stuff. No, I thought she was great in the movie. And I thought she was good enough to get nominated. I thought she is the heartbeat of that movie. If she doesn't give a good performance, or if you get another actress in there that's just not that great, this movie does not work. She really does a great job. Seth Rogen, for what, the little bit he's on screen, I thought he's really good in the movie too. And, I think he bought him the camera or whatever. And he's like, you're going to take this and you're going to do it because that's what your mom wants. Like, if you don't do this, you're going to kill your mom because that's what she wants you to do. She wants you to go chase your dreams. But I think, like I said, really well written. Spielberg, this is one of Spielberg's best in a very long time. Because he's had like the posts and stuff where it's like, yeah, these are good movies. Ready Player One's a really fun movie, but there's not a great Spielberg movie like he used to do. And this is that movie that's like, okay, yeah, Spielberg, he can still do it. Yeah, I love The Fabelmans.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you. Again, this movie is a little lower on the list only because I think in terms of cinematic scope, the ones that I put above it bring a little more in the theatrical sense. But this movie, I mean, again, we're discussing on National Cinema Day the best films to be released in a theater, and this is literally about like cinema at its finest, at its most artistic, at its like purest as you're coming up. Yeah, I mean, like I'm not obviously I'm not a down upon, Jewish boy who's getting racially abused
Yeah.
and, having those issues with my family. But I am somebody who found a lot to relate to in the character in this, almost like in terms of like a real life existence, like a sense of isolation for how much you enjoy one particular thing. And I think if you expand that past the scope of cinema, there's a lot of relatability that can be found within that character concept that I thought was just really delivered beautifully. You're at the performances in this. I mean, obviously Williams, Dano, Hirsch were all nominated.
Hirsch is so
I
good.
mean, if it weren't for the fact that like there's so many good supporting performances, anyways, I would have put Rogen in there as well. I think he's genuinely great for what he's in this movie. But I mean, all the performances, like top to bottom, are really great. Like the bullies really sell you on just how fucking shitty they are, and all the way to Lynch's cameo at the end as John Ford. Like everyone in this movie is delivering their A game, and I think it really sells it. It's really well shot. Just because I have it up in front of me when I was looking at the actor's name, Janusz Kaminski, who is one of Spielberg's go-to cinematographers, does an excellent job with this movie. And yeah, I hope this is the start of him, unless he's like preparing to retire anytime soon. I hope this is the start of like another round of great Spielberg movies, because I also, not on my list, but I loved West Side Story as well.
Yeah, so West Side Story is another one. I forgot about that.
I hope this is like a rebound again for him. Maybe we just got to pair him with Tony Kushner more often, because he wrote both of those with him. Maybe we just got to make them a pair and just get back into it for one more run before it's all said and done. Yeah, man, it's a brilliant. I mean, look, if you guys want to see how much I genuinely love this film, go back to the Battleground Casual episode where we discussed 2023 in film. This movie, well, I should say, I've adjusted my list slightly. After doing rewatches of both, I did move my original number 2 to my number 1 of that year, so this is now my second favorite film of 2022. But that said, like, if you want to see genuinely how much I loved it, I literally get emotional on camera talking about the movie. Like, that's how much I love this movie. So I definitely recommend checking it out. So
yeah, I'll say it lit that like spark of wanting to make movies again. Like it lit that spark. It did. Yeah. I'm actually writing something too. But we're gonna move to number 6, and I don't know if this is gonna be in your top 10, but maybe or top 6, I guess. Top Gun Maverick.
That is a punt.
It's a punt. Okay. Now we're gonna move to number 5. You're gonna notice a trend here for a second. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
That is a punt.
Okay. Number 4, Dune.
That is not in my top 11. Go ahead.
Okay. So Dune, I think like the Batman, I think people that maybe weren't as big on Dune, because I know there's a few people that didn't love it. I think when they see part 2, their enjoyment of this movie is going to go up, because this is literally part 1 of a story. I think this is Denis Villeneuve at his best. Got great performances in this movie throughout. I mean, it's a stacked cast. I mean, you got Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Javier Bardem. You got Dave Bautista. You got Oscar Isaac, Josh Brolin, Jason Momoa, Rachel Ferguson. I mean, it's stacked, and that's not everyone. Like, there's so many people in this movie, and it's a stacked cast. And the next one is more stacked. I mean, because in the next one you got Christopher Walken and Florence Pugh and Austin Butler. It's a stacked cast. And then you got Skarsgård too in this movie. Like it's crazy. But I think this is I got the Dune from the David what's his
David
face?
Lynch.
Yeah, Lynch. I got his Dune sitting up there. Not a great movie. This movie is fantastic. Great writing in this movie, like I said. I think the cinematography, and we mentioned it, or you mentioned it just a second ago when we were talking about the Batman. The cinematography in this movie is absolutely wonderful.
Shout out to Greg Fraser again.
Yeah, like just it's absolutely wonderful. You got the sandworm scene is great in this movie. Like I said, top-notch acting throughout. I think the mythology that's being set from the books. I think the mythology is obviously really interesting. This is something inspired, some of our favorite sci-fi fantasy movies. I truly love this film. Don't get a lot of action in the movie. You don't, but when you get it, it's great. I think the chemistry between like Brolin and Chalamet, I think is great. Same with Oscar Isaac and Chalamet. I think Oscar Isaac's great in this movie too. Um, it got nominated for a ton of awards, and I think it was well deserved. I truly do love this movie, and I'm going to keep it short because we're an hour into it.
Yeah, no, you're good. Uh, Again, I reflect everything that you said about it. I probably do fall into that camp that I think it needs. It's part two, and now from all accounts, it's part three with them adapting Messiah, sort of the end of this trilogy. I think it'll help it feel a little bit more complete as a package for me, but I did really enjoy it. And I'll say the biggest thing that this movie did for me, aside from truly, truly showing what Denis Villeneuve can do as a technical director, just his technical mastery of cinema, is this movie changed my mind on Jason Momoa, because I was not a fan of Momoa in most things I had seen prior to this. Like he's kind of like Emilia Clarke for me. I'd always heard how great he was on Game of Thrones, but having not seen Game of Thrones, everything I'd seen him in, and I didn't think he was like bad as Aquaman, but I didn't like the portrayal of that character. The whole Brodouche thing doesn't work for me, and Conan wasn't great, and he's been in a couple things that weren't great, but this movie truly sold me on, no, this guy can fucking act. Like, he's excellent in this movie.
He's the best part of Fast and Furious. Like,
he is, absolutely.
He makes it watchable.
He does, truly. So that was your number 4, correct?
Yes, this is my number 4. And I will say with Momoa, yeah, he's great in Game of Thrones, but you don't have to be a Shakespearean actor for his role in that show. But like with what he has to do, he's great in it. But yeah, that's my number 4.
All right, cool. So my 7 was The Fabelmans, so we already talked about it. My 6 is a film that I think only Henry Sanchez would have in a top 11, aside from myself, and that is In the Heights.
Okay. Yeah, that's not on my list.
I loved this movie, man. Again, talk about a theatrical experience. It's been a long time since we've had like a big blowout musical in the way that this is. That's genuinely fucking good. Because I'm sorry, The Greatest Showman is not that good. It's okay at best.
The more you watch it, the better it gets. Because I hated it the first time. But now I really enjoy it.
I think I've seen it like 2 or 3 times just because of friends
like
and
10.
shit. But okay, wow, okay.
So it gets better.
Are you dancing to the songs by now at this point? Do you have the choreography down?
7th or 8th time, like in the crowd was full, and like at that point nobody cares because everybody's already seen it. So we're all like dancing to it.
Getting down to it.
I'm telling you, if we would have put a camera in the theater, you see everybody in the theater up and dancing. It was like In the Heights, everybody dancing at the pool.
Yeah, no, man. So, yeah, fair enough. I understand why people love that film. I do. But this movie was the experience I wanted from that. And I don't think I'm not the biggest Lin-Manuel Miranda fan. I think when he's used correctly, when his music is used correctly, I think it can really, really add to something. I think that the music in this movie is genuinely excellent. Obviously, that comes from the stage play for the most part, but still, the music in this is genuinely excellent. The performances across the board, I mean, it truly a Star is Born moment for Anthony Ramos, which hopefully he can build on going forward. Yeah. I mean, I knew he was in Straight Outta Compton, but I had no idea Corey Hawkins could fucking sing like this. And he's excellent. Both actresses, really, Leslie Grace, Melissa Barrera. Obviously, Leslie Grace's most famous thing since then got canceled, but still, this like took 2 people from out of nowhere and spurred them onto proper careers. I mean, fuck, even for Star Wars fans, Jimmy Smits is in this thing singing. Like,
he's great,
and he's got a good voice, man. I did not know that he had like a whole stage career before this.
I didn't either.
But yeah, no, this movie is excellent. The songs are great. The performances are great. I think the adjustments that are made to the story, and this is a big thing in adaptation, is a lot of the times when people try and change and add things to the stories of these musicals, it doesn't work because it feels like it's been added after the fact. Actually, to use Lin as an example, The Little Mermaid, I didn't think all of his songs worked for that movie because some of them clearly felt added after the fact. Scuttlebutt. But with that said, in this movie, some of the line adjustments that were made to different songs in order to sort of fit the times more, the implementation of a DACA subplot, which was obviously a very modern thing to the time that did not exist back in the mid 2000s when this was made. All of it works smoothly to the point where, like, when I learned that after the fact from, I have a friend who's like a Lin-Manuel mega fan, and she was like telling me all the different things that were changed and added. Like, I would never have guessed that an entire subplot of this film did not exist previously. Again, you think about it for more than 2 seconds and you go, yeah, DACA wouldn't have been really a thing back then. But It's like the implementation of it all works really, really smoothly. And at the end of the day, like, this is a story on two romances, and then from there, like, these people within these romances just trying to find this place within this community. And I think that really, really works. And then the last thing I'll shout out is John Chu, who obviously did a great job of Crazy Rich Asians in terms of the feeling of community and the feeling of sense among a group of people, to bring that over to this movie and to give that same feeling to people, specifically Dominican. I know Dominican's a lot of what the characters are in this movie. It, again, really, really, really well done. And again, like, we've had a lot of musicals over the last few years, but they're all like Disney musicals or something like La La Land, which is a little smaller in stature. This movie lost Warner a lot of money, but it was nice to see them invest really and put effort into it, and it turned out excellent.
Yeah, I really do enjoy this movie. I think 96,000 is that whole musical number. It, just the way it's shot and everything. It's one of the better musical numbers in like the last, we'll say 30 years. Because granted, not a lot of musicals came out before like La La Land. But yeah, no, I really enjoy this movie. I think the acting is top notch, top to bottom. It's fun, has your emotional heartbeat in it too, which is, with the old lady and the abuela or whatever. And she's great in the movie too. Lin, Lin, our boy Lin, he's on my shit list right now because of Scuttlebutt. He is. But yeah, like Hamilton, In the Heights are like, and even like Encanto, because he did some of the music in Encanto.
Yes.
Like things like that was great.
Moana.
Mary Poppins got great. Moana, great too. Like, you're welcome. It's great. But what's it, Shiny or whatever?
Shiny, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great song. But no, in all seriousness though, like this is a really good movie. Lin, like I do like Lin's stuff. I'm curious to see what he does next. Hopefully staying away from Disney classics. But yeah, Anthony Ramos, hopefully he can rebound from Transformers, that box office performance. And hopefully
he's actually really good in that.
He's really good. He's really good in it. And the movie's good too. Like, I enjoyed the movie.
Yeah,
I hope it doesn't affect his career, but
the good thing is I mean, I say the good thing, like, he's already got another blockbuster in the can. The bad part is it's Ironheart for Disney Plus, so I guess we'll see how that turns out. But
yeah, hopefully it's good.
It's one of the better ones.
Hopefully, and he gets to play villains, so that'd be kind of cool to see. See him kind of do that type of role. But yeah, really enjoyed it. So now moving on to what, your 5?
My number 5, which is the punt from way back at the start of the show, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Okay. So I thought for some reason that was going to be your top 3 for a second.
This is the movie that I adjusted the most. I moved it up and down a lot just based on, like, again, comparing the others to like the theatrical experience, like where I wanted it to fall. And I settled it. I settled it at number 5 just because I think the ones that I put above it were a more unique experience for me. Whereas this is a sequel to a film that's also just as good as this one. So I guess if we're bearing down technicalities, it's not a completely unique experience. That said, this movie's a technical marvel from top to bottom. And obviously the more and more that's come out about the perfectionist nature of Lord as a producer, it seems as though from everything that I've heard and all the things behind the scenes that they are at least acknowledging that and working to not change the perfectionist nature, because I don't think you should have to change that. Art is art. You're
Right.
going to be the way you are, but certainly the way that it was handled can be adjusted.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like them pushing to have the film pulled from the schedule and then saying it'll be ready when it's ready. Like, I think that's a brilliant move. Just let
Yes.
them work and let them make the film. But that said, like, this is some of the best voice acting, like, cast wide, that I've heard in a film. Like, you have legitimate Oscar winners in this thing, like, going back and forth with each other. And it's really, really well put together. And the thing is, like, the more dramatic that this cast gets, because obviously you have the likes of like Brian Tyree Henry, Mahershala Ali, Oscar Isaac, even Haley Steinfeld, Oscar nominee in this movie, and then you could throw like a Jake Johnson in, and he still hangs with them. Like, the entire cast is performing
Mm-hmm.
excellently in this. Daniel Kaluuya, speaking of Oscar winner, the the animation in this thing, like, seriously, people will study this film.
Yeah.
Like, how you can combine that many animation styles in that frenetic of a way. Literally, Kaluuya's character, the changing images on him, and just the constant rotation of what's being seen, like, that will literally be studied. It's so advanced.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Um, and then at the heart, like, it's such a technical marvel that they don't forget about the script. Um, I mean, again, like, this movie makes decisions that a lot of films would not get away with. The fact that its opening 20 minutes is essentially setting up a supporting character subplot within the grander scheme of the film and the trilogy, and that it doesn't open with Miles. And then when it does go over to Miles, you spend another 30 minutes plus with him and his family and what he's going through, and then his relationship with Gwen and how that's affected, before you get into all the Spider-Verse travel and all the different characters. And it's like, I mean, God, it's like an hour and a half into the movie or some shit when Peter B. Parker gets introduced. Like,
Yeah.
major elements are left till that point. And I think it really, really works. Like, it's an exceptional use of time. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes, and it doesn't feel like it. By the time you reach the end, you're like, oh, it's like it's over. And that's in a movie that has, I mean, I saw it multiple times in theaters. Like, there are multiple moments in this movie where you could tell the audience mentally was like gearing up for an ending, and then it keeps going. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times you say that in a negative way, where like everyone makes jokes about Return of the King. Oh, it's got like 12 endings. It just doesn't stop. It keeps going. This is in a positive way. Like, this movie feels like it's gearing up to end, and then it keeps going, and you're continuously sucked back into what it's doing every step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, man, just literally, it's the slightest of technicality. Like, if I were going just based off my love for the film, which is how I originally ranked it before I started making adjustments, this was my number 2. The
Mm-hmm.
others are ahead of it because I think the theatrical experience adds a little more to them, or it did for myself. But
Yeah.
this movie is excellent.
Yeah. I think it's my number 11. Like,
Right.
when you talk about just the animation, it truly, animation wise, it is a masterpiece. Just with how everything's incorporated, different types of animation that is included with
Hmm.
all that stuff. Like, you have was it is it Kobe? Is that Spider Punk? Yeah, Spider Punk, where
Kobe,
his
yes.
animation is like completely different from Miles and
Mm-hmm.
Gwen and all the others. Like, it's really cool how they're able to incorporate all that. But not only that, but they were able to incorporate the live action stuff in it. Like,
Yep.
we had Donald Glover as the Prowler in this movie, which was really cool with how they did it. You had obviously the Venom
The Venom
scene
thing.
where
Yeah.
Spot goes and it's like actually in live action. Like, yeah, like technically animation in a live action world has been done before. Alvin and Chipmunks, the Smurfs,
God.
Roger Rabbit,
There we go.
stuff like that. Like, that stuff has obviously been that has been done before, but like taking live action and putting it in an animated world, I guess Roger Rabbit did it too, but this took it to another level. The voice acting's great in this film. The story is great too. The end of the movie really does a good job setting up what's to come in the final movie.
Right.
Um, there's all these like cameos. There's like fun little cameos from all these different eras of Spider-Man. Like it truly is a celebration of everything Spider-Man. Like it
Yes.
truly is. That whole Spider-Verse scene and the chase scene. It's all really cool. Like there's Spider-Men that are in this, or spider animals that are in this that you wouldn't think actually were like comic characters, but they are.
Yeah.
Um,
And we're
like
not just
it's
talking about Spider-Ham coming back. There's
yeah, like not
weirder
just
shit
that,
in this movie.
like the horse and the cat and like
The
it
T-Rex.
wouldn't, like the T-Rex. I mean, somebody made the meme of like the popsicle. It wouldn't have surprised me if they had the Spider-Man popsicle as a character in this movie. It wouldn't surprise me at all. And the Lego thing was great too. Like,
Yeah, the
and
Lego
the
scene.
fact that it was done by a 14-year-old kid makes it even crazier. Um, I mean, that kid's super
Oh god,
talented.
the '60s Spider-Man
The
cameo.
60s
The I can
Spider-Man,
do what you
or
can.
he's just
Oh,
frozen. He's just like frozen. Oh, I pulled something. But I really do. I do love this movie. It is my number 11. And yeah, I mean, is it going to stay in my top 11? Probably not. I mean, we got what, 6-7 years of films to come out. I'm sure something will come out that's better, like Beyond the Spider-Verse. But it is truly just a masterpiece in a filmmaking sense.
yeah. I was gonna say we established when we did the spoiler discussion on Casual. I definitely loved it more than you did, but I think I also liked
Yeah.
the first film maybe more than you did. So,
I really do love the first one.
oh, maybe that
I
one's
think
more
you
your
have it
favorite.
higher in the Spider-Man rankings though than I had it.
Yeah, but yeah. So that's my number 5, Across the Spider-Verse. My number 4, and if it's on your list, I think it may be a punt because it is recent, and that's why I didn't know how high to rank it. Oppenheimer.
Punt.
Yep. All right. So that is our 7 through 4s. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you for your number 3, sir. So from here, we're going to trade back and forth one apiece. What's your number 3?
So my number 3, I kind of hinted at it a little bit about our
Okay.
boy Lynn. Tick Tick Boom is my number 3.
Wow. Really?
Yes.
Number 3. Okay.
Yes.
I'll just get my piece out of the way real quick because you'll have infinitely more to say about it than I will. I loved this movie. It is awesome. Direct more original work, Lynn. This was great. Go ahead. Gush on it.
Yeah. So I was excited to see it because Hamilton, I believe, came out beforehand, and I really did enjoy Hamilton on Disney Plus. Obviously, it came out before because 2015, but
yeah,
obviously Disney Plus. I enjoyed it, so I was looking forward to Tick Tick Boom, and it was the first time Len was actually directing a movie. Like he obviously did his shows and stuff, but like an actual movie. And that's always interesting to see. Can somebody who has never directed a movie before, can they do it, and how good can they do it? And I thought he knocked it out of the park. I thought it was a great movie. Obviously you got Andrew Garfield here, who I can't remember who else got nominated that year.
It was Smith won.
Smith won.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense because I honestly thought Andrew Garfield should have won. I thought he should have won for this performance. He is truly just phenomenal in this movie with all the emotional range he brings into it. He can sing, which that surprised Lin-Manuel Miranda too, when he's like, look, I don't know if this guy can sing. If he can't sing, I got to get somebody else. And then Andrew Garfield, he starts singing, and he claims he's never sang before. He did Broadway, but I don't think it was a musical, the show he did. But he's like, I can't sing. I never sang. And then he just starts singing. And Lynn, I think, was like, you're lying because you're a really good singer. But Lynn he does a great job directing. Andrew Garfield, like I said, is phenomenal. I can't remember his name, but it's his friend in the movie. He should have been nominated for supporting actor. I thought he was
Robin DeJesus.
Yes, he should have been nominated. He is fantastic in this movie. The song that he sings towards the end of the movie when we find out he has AIDS is like gut-wrenching. The movie brought me on the verge of tears. I think it is really well written. The songs are really, really good. Therapy is super catchy and great. And if you don't know anything about the movie, just like with Dear Evan Hansen and Sincerely Me, if you know nothing about that show, or if you know nothing about Tick Tick Boom, it's very catchy. It seems like a happy song. Oh, we're singing about therapy. We're poking fun at this. Ha ha ha. But no, it's actually about Jonathan and his relationship falling apart. But it like that song's great. 3090's a great song to open up with. Just the music in general is great. And then, of course, not the last song in the movie, but when he's at the park and it's raining and he's singing there, it's a great song, but it's such an emotional thing that like just hits you like a truck. I truly love this film. Is it Alexandria Shipp? Is that her name?
Yes.
She's great in the movie. You obviously have the cameos from Hamilton when they're at the cafe singing Sundays or whatever. That was kind of fun. Like if if you were watching Hamilton, you're like, oh look, they're from Hamilton. It's the Schuyler sisters. But no, I truly adore this film. I think Lynn does a great job directing the movie. So that is going to be my number 3.
Yeah, no, it's truly an excellent film. It was in my top 10 of that year for sure. It's a great film. All right, so my number 3 is one of the ones that we punted from earlier as well. It is Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah, okay. That was my 6.
Yes, this movie was an experience in theaters, man. So I remember when this was announced, literally years ago at this point. And I just remember thinking, like, I don't know, man. This feels like, why does Top Gun need a sequel all these years later? Like, it just, like, I know it's like one of the movies from the 80s that people remember of his, but like, quite frankly, I think the first one's just okay. Like, I didn't, especially if Tony Scott wasn't around, why would we do this? And then they announced Kaczynski as director, and I'm like, well, fuck, he's only really made mediocre films so far. Why are we doing this? Like, just everything about it just felt really odd. It was a bunch of odd choices. Miles Teller in the co-lead role, that's off the back of like Fant Four Stick and kind of coming down off of the high he had in the early 2010s, and everything just felt weird about this film. And then I remember they did an early screening. It was one of the last things that I worked in 2019 before I left the theater. They did an early screening of the movie in 2019. And I remember speaking to one of the reps that was there, and they were kind of jokingly like, well, listen, I know like we work whatever, we're here to sell the movie or whatever, but they're like, no, like the movie's genuinely good. Like, seriously. And the reactions of people that walked out of that theater was unlike anything. And from that moment, I just kind of went, what the fuck is this movie that it's getting people to react this way? And then they kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And it was this thing where Cruise was like, this is a theatrical movie. It stays in theaters. And they pushed it and they pushed it and they pushed it. And then when you see it, you realize why. This movie is truly a theatrical experience. The practicality of all the stunt fighting in this movie with the jets, the fact that it is Cruise himself literally flying around in some of these scenes, obviously not nearly as many as Cruise did himself, but the fact that some of the other cast members also then learned how to fly planes because the attitude was like, oh, well, if he's doing it, fuck it, guess we're doing it too. Like, everything about this movie works. The fact that this is a movie, because usually when things are cut, you can tell. The fact that this movie has a large chunk of time cut out of it, because people like don't realize all those other pilots that like aren't really in the final film. It's one of the reasons why, for any Good Place fans out there, Manny Jacinto plays one of those pilots. And I remember a lot of people were like, why is he in this movie but not in this movie? They all had characters as well. This movie legitimately gave character to every single pilot. And I guess the attempt was like to hide who would be the final pilots at the end. And it was just too long, so they had to cut something, and they decided to cut that at the sake at the getting rid of their intent, but giving the character time to the pilots that mattered. Like, just the sheer amount of thought that went into this film on every level. This is a love letter to like everything about Tom Cruise. And it paid off. It paid off in spades. This movie made so much money, it's not even funny. We talked about the other night on Casual. Cruise walked away with $100 million in back end from this movie. Like, This made everyone so much money. It was an Oscar. It was a Best Picture nominee. That shocked the fuck out of me when it happened. I did not think they'd do it, especially because Avatar came out, and it's like, oh, of course, Avatar is going to get that. But they gave this
Right.
movie that. Yeah, no, like this movie is the real deal. If you still haven't seen it somehow, go check it out. Um, and yeah, like just the sound design, the visual effects, the cinematography. This is some of the purest just enjoyment in cinema that you're going to get.
Yeah, sorry, I'm getting my dad's. I'm getting YouTube TV working for my dad.
You're good. Good.
But no, it's number 6 on my list. If I had to have like any like nitpick with the movie, it's really kind of like the villains. Like, who's the villain? I don't know. And it's like, I had to kind of take a little inspiration from Star Wars. Like, hey, you gotta shoot right here, and it's got to go in that hole and stuff.
Yeah,
But
fair enough.
no, everything else about the movie, though, I think is phenomenal. I think the action in this movie, the way it's shot, is just absolutely insane. What they're able to pull off. I think Miles Teller's great in this movie.
Yes.
I think obviously Tom Cruise is great in this movie too. I did think it was going to get nominated for Best Picture because, like with No Way Home, like No Way Home brought like the youth back to the theater, like the younger
Yes.
audience, the comic book fans, that they brought that back. Top Gun brought everyone else back to the theater. Top Gun Maverick was one of the movies that truly did save the movies. Like the movie theaters would have been, they'd be hurting, especially right now. They'd be hurting if
Oh yeah.
Top Gun didn't come out. And like I said, No Way Home did save it too. But yeah, Top Gun helped save the theater. I think Spielberg even went up to Tom Cruise and said, "Thank you for saving
Yeah.
the theaters."
I,
Um,
I I'd say it was a three-pronged effect. I think No Way Home was the first step. I think Top Gun was the second step. I'd say Barbenheimer was probably the third step. I think at
yeah,
this point it's solidified for the immediate future.
yeah, that was the final chapter of this thing because AMC. I thought AMC was gonna
Go out of business. It
go
looked
out of
like it for a
business.
while.
Like,
And some chains did go out of business.
yeah,
Like
uh,
it what's the LA one? Oh, it's not ArcLight, right? Or is it
I think it might have been ArcLight. ArcLight. I think it was, and I think somebody bought it and
somebody
saved
bought
it.
it and brought it back? Yeah. But
Yeah,
no, ArcLight did go out of business.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, like I said, the writing's like I think the writing's really good. I don't think it should have been nominated for best writing, but I still think it was really good writing. Um, but I mean, outside of that, I think this movie was it did something, like it did something not a lot of movies could do. Um, this whole scene with Val Kilmer towards the end of the movie where you have Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer together, that's a powerful scene. Um, I think like everybody in general is really good in this movie. Michelle Monaghan, or no, not Michelle Monaghan, Jennifer Connelly. I think she's really good in this movie too.
Yeah.
She does a great job. And this movie, the end of this movie, I feel is perfect, and I don't want to see Top Gun 3. I think this had
No.
the perfect end for this character and for this whole story. Um, there were moments where you thought, oh, they might kill Tom Cruise off here. They might kill Maverick off. Um,
Yeah.
and like it did a really good job with things like that. But yeah, I do love the film. It's my number 6, so obviously I'm gonna love the movie.
Yeah, of
Um,
course. I mean, we
you
can
know,
gush about all 11 of these plus 8 more. We're literally picking the
yeah,
best of the best here.
yeah, but it's
So we'll
truly
go
great.
to your number 2.
My number 2, I'd be shocked if this is on your list.
Okay.
This is a small movie, a movie that I know not a lot of people saw when it came out, and it did cause some conversation. It
Okay.
is a little movie called Coda. Coda
Does
is
not.
great. I figured that would be one that wouldn't be on your list. That was the one I said I have something really high. I don't think it's going to be on
Yes.
your
Yeah.
list.
Yeah.
This is that movie. Um,
I
this
figured
is
that the brief discussion we had before the show, that was the one where I picked up. I was like, yeah, I definitely don't have that. And I think he does.
yeah. It's I saw this movie early.
Hmm.
I saw it pretty early before it came out. This was a Sundance movie, I believe. I didn't see it at part of Sundance. I saw it a little bit
I
after.
remember you having the screener for this movie. Like I
Yeah,
remember
I
you
got the script.
specifically saying,
I got like 3 of them. So I saw the movie like 2 or 3 times. But it's a small movie, and for those who don't know what it's about, it's about CODA stands for Child of Deaf Adult, deaf adults or whatever. That's what CODA stands for. It's an acronym, like MODA. But it's about this girl. She's a senior in high school, I believe, and her mom, dad, and brother are all deaf. They work on this boat. They go out. They catch crawfish, I believe, and they sell the crawfish, and that's how they make their living. And she wants to be a singer. That's what she loves. She loves music. Her parents want her and her brother to continue the business, mainly because if she's not a part of it, they don't know who's going to be able to actually like speak to the people that are buying the crawfish and whatnot, because her brother is deaf and most people, they're not going to learn sign language. But she wants to be a singer, and there's even a moment where like her parents don't want her to be a singer because she mentions it, where her mom's like, "You're probably a terrible singer anyway." And it's like, Jesus. But like she's getting these lessons, she's being a singer, and then she has this big audition. And I'll tell you what, this movie is one of maybe 3 movies that I've ever seen that did not just make me cry, it made me bawl like a baby. I'm going to spoil it. So if you haven't seen CODA, go away and then come back in like probably an hour when I'm done talking about this.
I'll cut them off before they check back later.
She has an audition that she's going to, and she's going to sing, and you can tell she's kind of nervous. And then you're not supposed to have anybody in there. It's supposed to be just the singer and the people judging to determine who's going to get the scholarship or whatever. So she's singing, doing her thing, and in the top, like upper area in that theater, you see her parents and her brother go there to support her, and that got me, because you see her reaction, her emotion to seeing her parents who didn't want her to do this at all, and her brother going there, and it hit. But what really got me was after that, her and her dad, who is played by Troy Kutzer, Kotzer or whatever, they're sitting on a truck, Kotzer, something like that. He won't know. They're sitting on a truck, and they're talking, and they're having a conversation, and he can't hear because he's deaf, and he's like, he asks her, "Hey, can you sing?" And like he'll put it, he puts his hand on her chest as she's singing, and you see the emotion coming from him and the emotion from her, and that got me bad. That was so beautiful with how it's done. It is a beautiful movie. It is a brilliantly acted movie. Like Troy Kutzer, well deserved on that Oscar win. He is phenomenal in this movie. He's so good. He's great in the movie. It is funny. Like there's a scene where there's a boy that comes over, and I think they're like practicing and all that stuff. And, like the parents think that he's her boyfriend, and they talked about how like they have sex, and it gets really loud because they can't hear. So it's like so uncontrollably loud, like when they're like making noises. It's so funny. Her instructor in this movie, I can't remember his name either. I'll pull that up. Actually,
it's Eugenio Derbez.
Yep, him. He is
Derbez.
Great. He's so good in this movie as the teacher. He's so good. I truly love this movie. It's well acted, brilliantly written, wonderfully directed. I don't care what anyone says. This deserved to win Best Picture. I know that was something I had a lot of people go, I don't think it should have won. No, it should have. It was phenomenal. I love that movie. So CODA is my number 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to follow up, so my thing, the one thing that sort of held me back on CODA a little bit is, I think they make the parents a little, especially the mom, a little too unlikable at points. Especially with some of the stuff that the mom says. For me, I felt that her, especially because she gets a little less than the dad does in terms of resolution, it just felt like it was all forgiven a little too quickly for how harsh she was, and genuinely how much she does use her kids.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, in terms of the emotional beats that it does go for, between pretty much any other character pairing in this movie, like even the smallest of interactions, like between the
Mm-hmm.
brother and the sister's best friend, and sort of the like romance that sort of builds there, like every character interaction in this thing is so genuine and it
Yeah.
feels so real. It's so well put together. I remember I was genuinely shocked when I saw that Kotzer had been nominated for supporting actor, and just immediately I was like, I want him to win it because he's so good in this, and I was so happy he won.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you, because leading up to the ceremony night, The Power of the Dog was what looked like it was going to win Best Picture,
Yeah.
and I just remember thinking I would like Coda to win. Of all the ones that I realistically thought could win, I would like Coda to win.
Mm-hmm.
But just fuck, please don't let it be Power of the Dog. I really
Yeah.
don't want it to be Power of the Dog. And I think maybe the only other movie that could have made me happier that year, winning Best Picture, was Belfast, because I love Belfast personally.
Yeah, I
And
did
again,
too.
small personal story,
Mm-hmm.
very similar films,
Irish.
but yeah, Irish, yeah, definitely, 100%. Not that Irish. I'm not Northern Irish, but still
Right.
enough. No, man, like this movie, in a year that quite frankly wasn't the strongest, especially when it came to Oscar pictures, this movie stood out so much, and I'm glad that it got the recognition it deserved.
Yeah.
And I think with the right career moves, Amelia Jones, like the actress at the center of this,
Mm-hmm.
she could become one of the biggest actresses within her age range, because she is so
Yeah.
talented for only being, she was like 20 when she shot this,
I
like
think so.
really talented.
Yeah, she was. And I will say real quick about the parent thing. The only why I special to mom, I give that kind of a pass because she, yeah, like unlikable because she's like, yeah, my daughter's probably terrible at singing. That's kind of mean, but it's not an original story. It's like it's based on a book,
Oh yeah,
and
it's
I
a
believe there
remake
was
of a film. Yeah,
and then there was a film as well. So
it's a
that's kind of
film
why
remake.
I'm like, I don't like knock it too much because then you're kind of changing a pretty important part to that story.
That's
Um,
fair. Yeah.
and like
Like I said,
the dad, he has that whole like he grows and like he's full
yeah.
on supportive of his daughter too, and I
Mm.
think that's an important thing. So if they would have made the mom a little more likable and not as mean, I do think that does change a little bit, but I think that plays an important part too because then she has to learn that I got to let my kids do what they want to do and not what I want them to do. So
Yeah,
she's not
that's
like
fair.
just
I could
mean
see it
throughout the
both
entire
ways.
thing. But yeah, I love that movie. So now we move to your number two.
My number two, which okay, so I know it's not on your list as well because your number one is a punt, as is mine actually. Funny enough, but my number two is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Um, I saw this movie 6 times in theaters.
Yeah.
Like, of all the films that I gave a 10 out of 10 to, this is the movie I saw the most. I've already gushed about this film multiple times. I mean, I went on casual last year because I got to see it a month ahead of its release.
Yeah.
And like I remember saying, like, I feel like I'm fucking insane for saying this, but Puss in Boots was fucking excellent. And then a month later, everybody saw it, and I was validated in my opinion because everybody
Yeah.
else believed it was genuinely excellent. The animation is top tier. It's some of DreamWorks' best work. I think this is Banderas' best performance of the character. I think it's a breakout role, and obviously I know he's very good in what we do in the shadows, but this is a breakout role for Harvey Guillen, which you normally don't say in an animated film. But his performance as Perro is like he's the heart of the film, 100%, and he like to the point where what was it like in the last 2 days? I saw. Oh yeah, that's what it was. In the last 2 days, he has a small part in Blue Beetle, and he has a small part in Strays. And both times, I was like, "Oh fuck, he's in like just whatever," because he's just so entertaining that like I want him in more things. He single-handedly makes me want to go watch What We Do in the Shadows because he's got so much heart, man, as an actor. He really does a great job.
I will say with What We Do in the Shadows, at first, I think like the first episode or two, like the first episode's very much like the movie, but once
Right,
it
it
gets
takes a bit
going,
to develop its own personality.
once it gets going, and he's great in the show too. I mean, it is so funny. I can't remember his name, but there's like the more nerdy guy, like he's just the bald white vampire in the movie, just a regular
Mm.
guy. I know season 5 is on Hulu right now. I gotta catch up on that.
It's like 5 seasons. Holy
It's
shit.
5 seasons. They're only like 24-minute episodes, but he's so funny in the movie, and everybody makes fun of the guy. But Colin is the guy. So the guy who plays Colin is perfect. It's a really good show. It's nominated for Emmys and Golden Globes for a reason. But I'll let you continue.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, obviously, you can go watch episodes of Casual if you want like my full thoughts on it, because I could sit here and gush, but like, truly, after a run of either disappointments or mediocre films, like The Bad Guys was a good step up for DreamWorks.
Mm-hmm.
And then this movie, like just randomly in the middle of all these films, the Puss in Boots sequel, the film that was abandoned, like the film that was left behind by Guillermo del Toro, the film that was left behind by Bob Perschetti, who directed Spider-Verse, which for anyone who was wondering why the film looks clearly influenced by Spider-Verse, one of its co-directors was its director at one point. And he left behind all the artwork and stuff he did for the film and said, use it happily when he left. So that's why it's so clearly influenced. But like all these great people worked on this movie, and then it got taken over by Joel Crawford, the guy who did The Croods 2. And I don't mind that movie, but I remember when I heard that he took over as director, I literally remember thinking, all right, so this movie's just fucking dead in the water. Like they're just passing this off to somebody in studio just to finish so they can put it out and get it over with.
Yeah.
And boy, if I, like, apologies to Joel Crawford, the dude put the fucking work in, and this movie's excellent. All right, so why is insert title here your number one?
Yeah, and real quick about Puss in Boots, because it's probably my number. Because truth be told, I had one movie at 11, and then Fablemans is the one I forgot about that I saw. I was like, okay, Fablemans has to be my top 11, so I bumped that one out. But before that and I was like, well, maybe in Sheeran bumped that one down a little more, and then Puss in Boots was probably 13. Animation great, Antonio Banderas great. Didn't expect this movie to be as good as it was, but it was fantastic. And the villain is so good in this movie. Had no right to be that good. Had no right to be that scary. The whistles and stuff. It's so good. I love it. It's one of the best Shrek.
Death is terrifying.
Yeah, Death is absolutely terrifying, and that movie is one of the best Shrek universe movies ever. And I wonder when we get the next Shrek, are we going to see all these, or at least one of these characters in the movie pop up in it?
Unironically, one of Florence Pugh's best performances.
Yeah, and
unironically, one of her best performances.
Yeah, she's great in the movie.
She's really good in this movie.
Yeah, and funny enough, that leads to my number one, which is Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer is my number one.
A lot less Florence Pugh titty in Puss in Boots, but
a lot less of that.
A lot less, like none, almost none.
Yeah, not animated, and it's not in Puss in Boots. But no, I went to see it twice. I saw it the first time, and it might have made it would have made my top 11. It probably would have landed more middle, but I took my dad to see it again. And I loved it the first time, but I went out of it and I was like, just walked out. I was like, okay, this is legit a masterpiece of filmmaking, like in every aspect. And my dad, too, seen tons of movies, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 10s, 20s, hundreds, thousands of movies. Walked out of this movie, and we sat probably at the screen because we saw an IMAX. That's the only format I saw it in, was IMAX. And we sat there for like probably a minute or two, just completely silent, then get up and walk out. And he literally goes to me and goes, I'll be honest, that's one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. And this I think is in my top 10 all time as well. I think this movie is a masterpiece. I feel very confident saying this. I think Christopher Nolan's going to win Best Director. Robert Downey Jr. is going to win Best Supporting Actor. This is going to win Best Score. I think this is going to win Best Sound Design. The sound is incredible in this movie with how they're able to do it. It's phenomenal. The acting, it's going to win Best Ensemble at SAG's award show. without a doubt. Just everybody's incredible. Cillian Murphy, a lock to be nominated. I think depending on what happens with Killers of the Flower Moon and maybe Napoleon, and I guess Maestro would be the other Bradley Cooper. If I walk out of those movies, I mean, if Bradley Cooper's great but not as good as Cillian Murphy, and if I feel the same with Robert Downey Jr. Leo, who apparently gives the greatest performance of his career in Killers of the Flower Moon. If I walk out of all these movies, Napoleon stuff, and I feel the same way, I think Cillian Murphy's a lock to win. I think he has a really good shot to win this year because he's phenomenal in this movie as Oppenheimer and just everything he brings to the table. Like I said, Robert Downey Jr. Alden Ehrenreich's great in this movie. He's so good. He's going to, this second half of 2023 is going to be his, half of the year.
Yeah.
Because not only is he in this movie, he's got Fair Play. He could be nominated for Fair Play. That's how good he is. But he's phenomenal in this movie. You have Florence Pugh in this movie, who's pretty good in the movie, too, for the little bit she's in. She's pretty good. But still, she probably gives the worst performance in the movie, but she's still pretty good. That just tells you how great everyone is in this movie. Emily Blunt, I think she has a shot to be nominated in this movie because she's sincerely, when she does her thing, she does it great. Not only her scene, towards the end, her big scene, but there's other scenes in the movie too that she's in where she's just great in it. There's so many people in this movie. What's his face? Who's in one of the new Terminator movies and in the Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. He's great in this movie. I'm not big on him. He's great in this movie. You have Casey Affleck in this movie. He's great. Gary Oldman's in this movie. He's so good too. Don't let that crybaby back in. He's great. The movie is powerful. The whole scene where he's giving the speech to the gym, the people in the gym, that's one of the most horrifying scenes I've ever seen in a movie. I want to see Nolan do a horror film because I think he would be great at it. That scene alone is so great. I think it's brilliantly written. I think it's going to win Best Screenplay, and it does what Nolan does best, where it takes all these different times and different situations, and it all comes towards the end and all just fits like a puzzle and it all makes sense. The last scene of this movie, where spoilers if you are one of the $700 million worth of revenue this movie's made that haven't seen the movie, where he's talking to Einstein and he's like, "You remember when we thought we came up with a formula or we came up with whatever it's called that could end up destroying the world?" And Einstein's like, "Yes," and he goes, "Well, I think we did." And then you see Einstein's reaction, and then you have the music, the score being put in, and the sound. You see all this stuff, and you see the water, and you see Oppenheimer himself, and it just goes to black. It's one of the most thought-provoking films. The end is incredible. Brilliantly acted, brilliantly directed, brilliantly written, brilliant sound. Everything about this movie is brilliant. I think this movie is going to be like Return of the King in the sense where it's going to get a ton of nominations and maybe one or two awards it's nominated for doesn't win, but everything else it's going to win. I think it's going to win pretty much every single award at the Oscars. I think that's the type of movie this is.
Potentially, yeah. For the sake of time, I'll just say it's time coded, so you can go find it. But we spent up 30 plus minutes on it on the most recent episode of Casual last week. You guys can go check that out because Matt unfortunately wasn't there. So this is his get out about the film. But no, you're right. It's a masterclass. I mean, how deep does this film go? We had a whole discussion about you couldn't pick. It was me and Pez did it. You could pick an entire Best Supporting Actor category from performances in this film, and we wound up with 4 different choices for the role. It's incredible what you can do with this movie. So that's his number one. My number one is Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is obviously it's your number 5. This movie, so this is the one where originally this was my number 2 of 2022. I saw it one more time in theaters after it won Best Picture, and I just kind of sat there and I went, I think this might be the best film of this year. This film is a theatrical experience in its purest. It's best seen on the big screen. And it's, to me, like, as weird as it is cinema at its purest, because it is truly an artistic duo in this sense, in Daniels putting everything on the screen, and it goes as weird as it wants to, it goes as far as it wants to, it goes as deep as it wants to. It is just such a pure expression of feeling that it's hard for me not to look at. Single-handedly, it has handed Ke Huy Quan a career that will probably last him to the end of his lifetime, and deservedly so. He earned his Oscar. Michelle Yeoh earned her Oscar. Jamie Lee Curtis was fine. I don't know if she earned that Oscar, but when was she ever going to get a chance at one again? Stephanie Hsu was great in this film. Again, like, you look at what she's been in this year, like being in like Joyride, like it's such an early part of her career, showing such diversity, showing such range in this film, going from being the daughter to being the villain to being, funny to being dark and introspective. Yeah, again, I've gushed about this film before, so I don't know how much more I could say about it. But like, to me, if a film, I've said before, not many films can make me tear up. The first time I saw this film, way back in March of 2022. The scene where Ke Huy Quan it's the speech of, in any life in another time, maybe, we could have worked out. And it's the speech that ends with I would have loved doing laundry with you. Mm-hmm. I was so captivated by the performance in that moment that it started making me tear up, because, as I've said before, I'm somebody who, my mind is always kind of overactive in thinking, and I think about the outside effectors of these situations as well. And like, you hear this speech about the idea of longing for a different life than the one you have, and you look at Ke Huy Quan as an actor, his career, the way everything went for him, and you can feel the emotion in his voice of spending a life almost longing for a different career and now achieving it in this sense.
Right.
That it broke me in the theater. But then if you can make me emotional during a scene with rocks and a dialogue bubble,
yeah,
you are doing something right. And that just, this movie is incredible. And that's my final piece on it.
Yeah, I think it's truly great. This is another movie that, like, I think it does the multiverse probably better than anyone has done it. Just like the way they use it and everything. I think it's all great. This is a movie where there are some just insane things that happen in the film that this can turn people off, for sure. My dad being one. I was watching this with
was it the dildo?
And dad. It was the butt plug.
Is it the dildo?
Where the guy jumps on it. My dad, because you see it and they're like fighting over it and stuff, because you have to jump on it to. That was one thing. You had to jump on the
ass. Okay.
Yeah.
I was talking about like the dildo lightsaber fight.
No, we didn't get there. We didn't get there. My dad goes, I swear, if somebody jumps on that and sits on it, I'm turning this off. And then you get to that scene, he's like, okay, I'm done. I can't watch. And now he's kind of like, I might finish it later. That was a little bit too much. But Raccoony or whatever, that scene was great. Raccoony was great. The hot dog fingers was funny.
I feel like this movie has 3 different things in it where if you can make it past all 3, you'll complete the film. The first is them trying to get the thing shoved up their ass.
Yeah.
The second is the dildo, and the third is the hot dog fingers and the weird sexual stuff. If you can get past all that, then you'll make it.
It's definitely not for my mom. My mom, like, as all the craziness was going on early on in the movie before the butt stuff, my mom was like, she kept looking at me like, what are you making me watch? And like, I'm laughing. It's some of that stuff is just so crazy. It's funny, but it's not just like super crazy and whatnot, but like, it's
right.
Like it has an emotional beat to it that is really beautiful. You have the mother and daughter story that I think is, really well done in this movie. Ki Kwan, like you said, I mean, he's going to be acting for the rest of his life. To go from not really acting anymore and maybe doing some things on set, like behind the scenes, to doing this movie, what a way to bounce back. I mean, last year was just like the return of certain people, because it was Ki Kwan and Brendan Fraser. Like, they come back at full force and they're phenomenal in their movies. Tobey Maguire coming back, that was the year prior, but that really was the start of it.
Hell, even Austin Butler rebounded from his Nickelodeon career.
Yeah, Austin Butler just rebounds. And,
remember, guys, I think my favorite thing that I read was for all you old Nickelodeon kids, the Zoe 101 reunion film that came out this year.
Yeah.
He did not turn it down. He just wasn't offered anything in the film.
Yeah, he just wasn't offered. But
either they knew or they're dumb. One or the other.
And they're dumb for doing a Zoe 101 movie, but not a Ned's Declassified movie or show. Because that's what people wanted, was Ned's Declassified. They wanted to see that come back, because that actually could work as a show.
That's a different
iCarly kind of
literally a different podcast.
Yeah, it's a different podcast. It's a good podcast too. But that would have worked, just like iCarly did. But no, again, this movie it's phenomenal. I think Stephanie Hsu should have won over Jamie Lee Curtis personally. Jamie Lee Curtis, how did she get nominated? That's my thing. I don't think she should have been nominated. I guess it's like, hey, you've been in Hollywood for a while, man. Here's your Oscar. But no, I truly love this movie. It is crazy. It is emotional. It is just beautiful.
I was going to say, but before we move on to combining the list, to provide a quick defense of Jamie Lee, I think what got her, because again, I don't agree with the win outside of the legacy argument. I think what got her the nomination is the fact that more than any other character in this film, she is the one that has to portray the most, if that makes sense. Because her character is the one that changes the most when you go between universes.
Yeah, but she's not great at it.
In one universe, she's the stern but compassionate, desk lady. In another, she's, the supporting antagonist. In another universe, she's Michelle Yeoh's love interest. She's the one that probably had to bring the most range. It's just all of it is in a very subdued, supporting manner.
Yeah.
So I could see the argument for nominating her, but again, outside of legacy, I would not have given her the win.
But you see, you have to be good in a movie to be nominated.
And with that, we're going to go ahead and combine the list together before we go ahead and go too far down that rabbit hole. All right, so as much as we reasonably can, I want to solve this through the manner of discussion, because as much as obviously, I mean, we're completely, we're aping and then slightly adjusting the now dead top 10 show. One of my biggest pet peeves towards the conclusion of that show was just hey, you want to flip a coin? Okay, let's do it. So I want to have actual discussion as we put these together. So I have been taking notes. So I have where each of our films fell on the list. So with that said, we both had each other's number ones, which makes sense. I'm willing to concede Oppenheimer at the number one spot. It was your 1, my 4. You had everything at 5. So that just makes sense to me.
Okay. Yeah.
That you'll take the number 1 this time around.
Okay.
So put Oppenheimer at number 1, and then Everything Everywhere All at Once will take number 2.
That works for me.
So then for the next spot on the list, the next crossover that we have is Top Gun Maverick, which was my 3, your 6. So do we want to put that at 3, or do we want to figure out our 2s first?
Let's figure out our 2s first, because I mean that could even bump up to 2, depending on what we all have that lines up.
Okay, so my 2 was Puss in Boots, your 2 was Coda.
Yeah.
Okay, so my argument for that would be, I would put Puss in Boots ahead of it, because at the very least you considered Puss in Boots, whereas just based off score and rating, Coda was never going to make it on mine.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that works for me. I'm going to fight for Coda to be on the list, for sure.
Oh, Coda's making it on the list, but
I guess I'll let Puss in Boots be number 2, because I did consider it.
All right, so that would make Puss in Boots, The Last Wish makes the list. Coda goes on immediately after it. So that's our top 4 done. And then we go to our 3s. Top Gun will go on first because we both had it.
Yeah.
And then I'll give you, before we consider what comes next, I'll give you Tick, Tick, Boom immediately after it.
Okay.
Since it's also our top 3. Because then our next crossover, it starts to fall into the bottom of the list.
Yeah. Which would be
Okay.
No Way
So
Home.
we have 3 remaining crossovers. So we have Across the Spider-Verse, which is my 5, your 11.
Yeah.
We have Fabelmans, which was both of our 7s.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have No Way Home, which was your 8, my 11. So
Fabelmans at 7 then?
Yeah, so Tick, Tick, Boom was 6. So do you want to just put Fabelman straight on at 7 then?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So that way we can get the crossover on. And then I would say, since both of our Spider-Man films are okay, so we have 4 spots remaining. So do you want to do the Spider-Man films next, or do you want to put them at the end and then pick 2 more to come next?
Are those our final 2 crossovers?
Crossover, yeah.
Yeah, I would put...
But they were both...
I would put them
each
probably
one
next
was
then.
our number 11, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. And then Spider-Verse was higher
on my list than
yours,
No Way Home was on yours.
Yeah, so should we...
So do you want to do them? Do you want to do them 8, 9, or 10 or 11?
I'm trying to think what other 2 movies could be on there.
So here we go. I have both lists, so I can do it. Okay, so your next film would be your number 4, which is Dune.
Yeah, I would like Dune.
And then my next film that I don't have would be plus Top Gun, Oppenheimer's on there, Spider-Man. My next one would be In the Heights. So then why don't we do at number 6? So why don't we do this then? Because In the Heights is below Spider-Man. I'll give you Dune at 8.
Okay.
And then we'll do the 2 Spider-Man films, and then In the Heights can be the final film at number 11.
That works.
All right.
That would work for me.
And then your top 6, top 7 is on as well because Maverick was your 6. So yeah, so it evens out pretty well.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll do Dune 8. Did you want to do Spider-Verse ahead of No Way Home just based on our ranking, or did you want to discuss it?
I mean, I prefer No Way Home, obviously, but because of how the rankings are, it probably should be Across the Spider-Verse, since you have it higher on your list and I had No Way Home on my list.
Okay.
And
gotcha.
We obviously had the other at 11 for ours.
All right, so Across the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man, No Way Home, and then In the Heights will take the final spot. Shout out to Henry, your film made it. Congrats.
There you go. Congratulations.
All right. So with that said, I don't know. Do we have any music cues or anything? I didn't think about that aspect of it. All right. Why don't I'll since I have it in front of me, I'll read the list if you just want to do the announcing of the numbers.
Okay, cool. We can do that. So we'll start at number 11.
All right. So give it some fanfare intro. All right. So this is for this episode of Battleground Countdown, the top 11 films of 2020. Start me off, Matt.
So at number 11.
In the Heights.
Okay. Number 10.
Spider-Man No Way Home.
Number 9.
Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Number 8.
Dune.
Number 7.
The Fabelmans.
Number 6.
Tick, Tick, Boom.
Number 5.
Top Gun Maverick.
Number 4.
Coda.
Number 3.
Puss in Boots, The Last Wish.
Number 2.
Everything Everywhere, All at Once.
And number 1.
Oppenheimer.
There we go. That is a list.
The number 1 spot. All right, so what did we learn from this first show? Time management.
Yeah,
That's
time. Yes.
Time management, probably the first thing. But no, overall, I think it was a good show. It was a good topic to start with, a wide range of films. Before we head out of here, do we want to give them the topics for the remainder of the year?
Okay, so I think... Are we doing any in September?
We do, yeah. So the plan is we picked out roughly 2 per month. So based on the different films that are coming out, we've picked out 2 per month, starting with September. So the next episode will be in September. Yes. And the topics are... Do you want me to create banners real quick, or do you want to put graphics in after the fact?
We'll just do banners.
Okay, all right. Actually, you know what? That'll take too much time. Either do the graphics or we'll just read it out loud. Anyways, it'll be on the Facebook page. All right, so in September, in honor of The Equalizer 3, our next episode will be Denzel Washington. Later that month, in honor of Dumb Money, the topic will be ensemble biopics. We may change the specific wording of that when we get to it, but that's generally what we're going for. Yeah. In October, in honor of the finale airing in the first week of Ahsoka, we'll be doing top 10 Star Wars films. And then later in the month, in honor of Killers of the Flower Moon, we'll be doing top 10 Scorsese. In November, in honor of Dune Part 2, we'll be doing top 10 Denis Villeneuve. And then in honor of both the 100th year anniversary of the company and the release of Wish, we'll be doing top 10 Disney or 11, I guess. I've been saying 10 this entire time. 11 Disney animation films. And then finally, the last 2 in December, in honor of both Wonka and The Color Purple. And I think there may be one more coming out as well. I'm not 100% sure. Top 10 musicals, because we have a lot of musicals. I mean, Wish is also technically a musical at the end of the year. And then finally... in honor and I guess memoriam of its existence, in honor of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, we'll be doing top 10 or 11 DC EU films. So Denzel, ensemble biopics, Star Wars, Scorsese, Villeneuve, animation, musicals, and DC EU. A wide mix of topics, some with very large lists, some with more limited lists. That I think will create a variety in terms of show type over the course of the next couple months. So yeah, that is the show. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching. We hope you enjoyed it. Comment below your thoughts in the comments. What were some of your favorite films that maybe we didn't mention? What were your thoughts on the final ranking? And anything else? Matt, any final thoughts before we close out?
No, I think that does it. Had a good time. It's a long time, but it was a good time.
It was a good time.
Our show was longer than a good chunk of the movies that were on the list. But hey,
that shows how much we love the films.
Yes.
And time management, which we'll get better at. But
yes.
No, guys, thank you for watching. Be sure to support Matt if you're a football fan, Inside the Horseshoe, which, of course, football season's coming back, which means he'll be more active on that. Be sure to check out the weekly uploads constantly of Movie Battleground, as well as any of the other shows we have on the channel, including Battleground Casual and some of the other ideas we have that'll be coming up in the near future. But with all that said, guys, on behalf of Matt and myself, thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next time in September for Denzel Washington.